Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine going from being a broke personal trainer, really living paycheck to paycheck, and then somehow becoming the CEO of a multi-hundred-million-dollar business portfolio, getting to a net worth of $100 million, all before 28. I mean, how do you even start making that kind of leap? Today, we're diving deep into one entrepreneur's, let's say, unique perspective on brainwashing yourself to riches. And her 8 pretty powerful principles for building wealth. Our goal here is to really pull out the key insights, the surprising facts from her journey, and help you see how shifting your mindset, how it could actually lead to huge financial change for you too.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff because this isn't just, about stock tips or budgeting hacks. It's a total rethink of our baked-in beliefs about money, our assumptions. And it really makes you ask, doesn't it? Are my own subconscious attitudes, maybe my surroundings actually, blocking my financial potential?
That's exactly where she starts. This entrepreneur, Layla Hormozi, talks about her beginnings. Grew up where making even $100,000 felt like completely unfathomable,
Yeah.
impossible. She saw everyone around her had what she calls a poor dad mentality,
Yeah.
focused on scarcity, job security.
Right, playing defense instead of offense with money.
Exactly. And she realized her own beliefs were the biggest hurdle. So she decided she had to change her whole environment, even moved to California literally 3 days before graduating college. She was convinced that getting near different ideas, different people, was step one. Okay, so let's jump right into these principles. The first one, it's pretty stark, maybe even a bit controversial for some. Ignore advice from broke people. Straight up. Her logic is blunt. Why take financial advice from someone with less money than you want, especially if you're aiming high? She uses this analogy like, would you listen to a personal trainer who's 100 pounds overweight?
Mm-hmm.
It's about clearing the path, making it easier to get where you want to go. If your circle isn't financially successful, it's harder to break out.
And that's such a critical point because it really challenges this default trust we have, right? Especially for advice from, say, parents or mentors we admire. But what she's highlighting is that your financial compass can get skewed if you're following directions from people who just haven't been where you're trying to go. She tells this story about a mentor, someone really helpful initially, but within 24 months, her business just exploded past the mentor's own scale. Suddenly, the advice wasn't just unhelpful, it was potentially damaging.
Because the context was totally different.
Exactly. The mentor hadn't solved problems at that level. And she mentions another friend who, when hearing her big goals, actually asked, "Don't you already have enough?"
Wow. That's that scarcity mindset creeping in.
Right there. It can subtly pull you back.
And it's important to stress, this isn't about judging people's character or worth. It's purely about alignment. Aligning your influences with your goals, seeking out people who have achieved what you want. And, there's actually data on this. A Federal Reserve survey found that people with higher income friends and peers tend to eventually earn more themselves.
Makes sense. Proximity matters.
That's like fitness.
Right.
Right. You hang around fit people, you start adopting their habits, their mindset becomes more normal to you.
Yeah.
So maybe it's less about like cutting people off entirely and more about being really intentional about who's in your inner circle for financial thinking.
Mm.
Okay, so once you've got your advice sources sorted, the next piece, according to her, is understanding money itself. She draws this really important line. Money loves speed while wealth loves time. Let's unpack that. What does she mean by money loving speed?
So money loves speed refers to this mindset of like rapid action, quick execution, fast iteration, but specifically for decisions that are easily reversible. Think starting a business, launching a minimum viable product, testing a marketing campaign. You act fast, you get data, you adjust quickly. The cost of being wrong is relatively low. You can pivot.
Like A/B testing, maybe?
Exactly like A/B testing. Or iterating on a feature based on immediate user feedback. Low cost of failure, high value on speed and learning.
Right. Makes total sense. You're basically experimenting without betting the farm.
Mm.
So how does that contrast with wealth-loving time? What are these irreversible decisions she warns about?
Wealth building. That's different. The decisions there are often irreversible or at least very costly to undo. We're talking major things. Buying large real estate assets, selling your entire company, making huge long-term investment commitments.
Big stakes.
Huge stakes, massive capital, complex legal stuff, market timing. You can't easily just say, oops, and reverse it without potentially catastrophic losses. She shares this really cautionary story about a friend. Sold his business, got $10 million cash. Yeah, but then he lost $9 million of it in just 4 years. Why? Because he rushed into big investments. He applied that speed mindset.
To a time game.
Precisely. The skills needed to quickly scale a startup can be the opposite of what's needed to patiently grow and protect wealth over decades. Deliberation becomes key. Patience is the virtue there.
Okay, wow. That distinction alone is huge. And it leads perfectly into her third principle, which feels like a real aha moment for many. Money goes where attention flows. Well, so many of us, myself included probably, were taught to focus laser-like on saving, clipping coupons, finding deals. But she argues if all your attention is on saving pennies, you just get better at saving pennies from a relatively small income. What if you directed that same intensity, that focus, onto making more money instead?
It's a fundamental shift, isn't it? It really changes the frame. And what's powerful is this idea of the opportunity cost of your attention. Where is your focus actually going? She tells the story from early in her career. She's spending like 12 hours a week doing things to save money, cleaning her own place, cooking everything from scratch.
Try and be frugal.
Right. But her manager pointed out, in those 12 hours, you could make 3 more sales. That revenue would dwarf the savings, and you could pay someone else to do those tasks.
Freeing up her time for more high-value work.
Exactly. Leverage. Another example she gives. A CEO in her portfolio. Revenue had flatlined. They looked at his calendar. 80% of his time was on revenue-supporting stuff. Meetings, admin, internal things, not revenue-generating activities like sales, marketing, product dev. So they shifted his focus squarely onto generation. Result, 40% growth the very next quarter. Her point is, there's no real shortage of money out there. There's often just a shortage of focused attention being strategically applied to earning it.
That's such a powerful lesson in leverage, both financial and, mental leverage. And there's research supporting this too. A study showed entrepreneurs focused mainly on revenue generation tend to have 15–25% higher revenue than those obsessed with cost cutting.
Makes intuitive sense.
It really is like trying to save your way to being rich is like trying to win a marathon by running backwards. You might finish, eventually, but you're not going to win the race. It's about consciously aiming your mental firepower where it generates the biggest return. Okay, so let's say you're applying these principles, money starts flowing. There's a common trap, right? You start making good money, you assume expensive solutions must be better, throw money at problems. But her fourth principle argues the opposite, quite counterintuitively. Frugality drives innovation. This makes you pause. Why would limiting your resources actually spark better ideas?
It's a fascinating paradox, isn't it? The core concept is that problems and solutions, they tend to expand to fill the budget you allocate. If you have, say, unlimited funds, you're actually less likely to be truly creative or efficient. You often just take the most obvious, brute force, and usually most expensive route.
The path of least resistance, financially.
Precisely. She gives this perfect example from her gym launch days. A legal compliance issue came up. She hired a top-tier, very expensive legal team. They ended up charging $870,000 for over 1,000 basically useless comments on documents. She called it the worst solution possible to what was fundamentally a simple need. So her next step, the frugal approach. She sat down and distilled the essential legal principles needed onto a single page, a simple checklist.
1 page versus 870 Ks.
Exactly. And she still uses that simple one-pager across her portfolio companies today. It reinforces her mantra, simple scales, fancy fails. Having a bigger wallet doesn't guarantee better solutions. Sometimes it just buys complexity and distraction, preventing that lean, resourceful thinking that actually drives real innovation.
So it's about using constraints to force creativity, finding elegant, simple answers instead of just overwhelming the problem with cash. Interesting. Okay, next principle, number 5. This one might sound, again, a bit counterintuitive, especially compared to the go-all-in, risk-everything narrative you sometimes hear in entrepreneurship. Always have an O'Sheaf fund. She strongly believes having this financial safety net doesn't hold you back. It actually leads to better decisions and, weirdly, allows more calculated risk-taking. How does that work? How does security breed risk?
It's all about the psychology, really.
Yeah.
It acts as a crucial mental buffer, something many people probably underestimate. When you know deep down that your personal basics are covered, that you have this OSH fund set aside for emergencies, your personal finances are secure, your decision-making process changes, it shifts away from panic, away from scarcity thinking, towards more strategic, long-term thinking.
You're not making decisions out of fear.
Exactly. You're less likely to make short-sighted, fear-driven moves just to survive the next month. She explains that knowing her own personal finances were solid allowed her to take much bigger calculated risks in her businesses, without that constant paralyzing fear of losing everything. She gives this great example of a founder she worked with. He was hesitant to expand, open new locations, even though the numbers, the metrics all screamed, go.
Why the hesitation?
Because personally, he only had about $40,000 saved up. The thought of the expansion potentially failing and wiping him out personally was holding him back. So step one was getting his personal finances shored up with a proper safety net. Once that was solid.
He felt free to make the bolder business moves.
Precisely. It empowered him to make those necessary growth investments. Because often making significant money requires taking continuous, calculated risks. The paradox is that personal security enables professional boldness.
That's a really powerful insight. Solid personal finances aren't just defensive, they're offensive, enabling bigger plays. Okay, principle number 6. This one sounds simple, maybe obvious, but man, is it hard to stick to in the real world. Never rush money decisions, period. She says if any money decision requires you to rush, just don't do it, ever. Walk away.
Yeah, and it forces you to examine the why behind the rush, right? Rushing almost always stems from emotion, not logic. Usually it's FOMO, that fear of missing out, or some kind of manufactured scarcity tactic.
Limited time offer.
Exactly, those pressure tactics. She's very open about her own worst purchase ever, a multi-million-dollar company she bought basically out of FOMO. She felt like if she didn't act now, the opportunity would vanish. Deep regret later. She realized it wasn't even a fundamentally good company. It became a massive drain on her time, energy, resources. A huge mistake fueled by rushing. And she applies this personally too, like with shopping. Rushed purchases almost always lead to buyer's remorse later.
We've all been there.
Absolutely. And it's not just her feeling. There's data again. A study by the National Endowment for Financial Education found something like 68% of people regret financial decisions they made under pressure. Think about the really legendary investors, Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, what's their trademark?
Patience. Extreme patience.
Exactly. They might literally take years to analyze and make a major investment decision. They resist impulse. They let logic and facts dictate the timing, not emotion or external pressure.
That principle really hits home, especially today with everything moving so fast. Okay, number 7. This one she calls a game changer for her own mindset. Possibly liberating, maybe a little controversial too. Money is a game. What does she mean by that? What are the implications of seeing wealth creation as a game? And importantly, how do you make sure that doesn't just turn into like a cynical, purely transactional view?
It is a genuinely transformative way to look at it. And the key implication, I think, is how it democratizes the whole idea of wealth. Before she had this realization, she admits she believed that making serious money meant you had to be like superiorly intelligent or have some kind of innate high character, some special quality.
That only certain people could win.
Right. But then she went to this mastermind event, one of those high-level groups where successful people share insights. And she realized it wasn't about inherent genius. It was about understanding and playing by a specific set of rules. She recalls listening to one speaker and honestly thinking, this guy's kind of an idiot in her own estimation of his intellect. But then came the humbling part. She realized this idiot was making 40 times her income at the time. Why? Because he understood the specific game he was in. He knew the rules of his market. She saw it again later comparing herself to a peer. His success wasn't because he was fundamentally better or smarter. It was because he was playing in a much, much larger market, real estate, versus her niche of gyms back then. The scale was different.
So the rules are about things like market size, leverage, timing, network effects.
Exactly. Understanding the dynamics of your chosen field. And research backs this up too. One NBER study suggested only about 20% of income difference is directly linked to IQ. Other factors like optimism, strategy, resilience, essentially, how well you played the game matter hugely. It shifts the focus from, am I smart enough, to, do I understand the rules of this specific game?
That is incredibly empowering. It moves it from fixed talent to learnable strategy. Find your game, learn the rules. Huge. Okay, which brings us to the final principle, number 8. Money is a tool. So, after all this ignoring bad advice, understanding speed versus time, focusing attention, being frugal yet bold, playing the game, what's the ultimate point? What's the purpose of the money itself?
This really gets to the core question, doesn't it? Why accumulate it? What are you actually building? Layla's point is clear. Money isn't the end goal. It's not just for piling up in a vault. It's a tool, a resource, a means to build more or to get you what you really value, whether that's time, impact, freedom, or building something else. She talks about selling her business. Suddenly, she has $45 million in dividends, another $45 million cash. Huge numbers.
Life-changing money.
But she realized the money itself didn't fundamentally change her day-to-day life or happiness. What changed things was what she did with it. She immediately plowed it back into starting her current venture, acquisition.com, hired a team, saw the cash as fuel, as a resource to trade for future growth, for building the next thing. It highlights this intensely long-term perspective.
Yeah.
She contrasts this with the story of a salesperson on her team, made a $40,000 commission his first month. Great start. What did he do? Immediately went out, bought a brand new house, new car, lifestyle inflation, instantly. A year later, had to sell both.
Ouch. Short-term thinking.
Exactly. Contrast that with her driving a basic Prius with a cracked windshield, even after making millions. It wasn't about deprivation, it was about strategy. Wealthy people, she argues, don't make impulsive, ego-driven purchases, they think. How will this purchase benefit me long term? Will it give me back time and attention for productive things, or will it take away attention? Money is a lever. The question is, how are you choosing to use that leverage?
Wow. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. 8 really powerful principles, from being ruthless about whose advice you take, understanding that crucial difference between money needing speed and wealth needing time, to directing your attention, finding innovation and frugality, building that safety net to enable bigger risks, never rushing decisions.
Recognizing money as a game you can learn the rules to, and finally seeing money purely as a tool for building.
It really maps out a journey from that poor dad mentality, that feeling of scarcity and limitation, to a completely different mindset, one that actively looks for, understands, and creates wealth opportunities.
Absolutely. And if you step back and look at the whole picture, this deep dive really highlights that financial success isn't just about luck or timing the market or having some secret connection. It's much more about a deliberate, sometimes really counterintuitive, internal rewiring, reprogramming how we think about earning, saving, investing, and risk. It's about applying logic and strategy to money instead of being constantly swayed by emotion, fear, or those limiting beliefs we might have inherited.
So for you listening right now, here's something to maybe chew on. If your current financial situation is, in many ways, a reflection of your money mindset, your internal programming, what's just one principle from our deep dive today that really resonated? One thing you could start applying, maybe even immediately, to begin reprogramming yourself for the financial future you truly want to build.